In an inequitable society where social practices are based on the hierarchies of race, class, gender, sexuality, immigration status, and other markers of difference, these widely accepted beliefs, assumptions, and behaviors often reinforce the norms of how people see themselves and relate with social systems that are arranged by such hierarchies, material relations, and power.
Justice leader, I aim to bring awareness to the systematic marginalization of students with disabilities and am committed to promoting Cooper, Otis, and Green's institutional culture of care that embodies inclusivity and enables all students to feel a sense of belonging, which in turn enhances their academic performance. Social justice leaders can purge the system of labels and groupings that promote a perception of predetermined failure and lead to self-deception before students have had a chance to explore their sense of self. Labeling and grouping students contradict high expectations of success, denies access to rigorous coursework and electives, and directly excludes students from social groups, which disrupts attempts to form a peer positive culture. Recognizing that educational institutions are inherently built upon systems that exclude, separate, disadvantage certain groups of people, social justice leaders must be committed to breaking the patterns of inequity and eliminating the conditions and barriers that preclude students from achieving equal educational outcomes. As someone diagnosed with dyslexia in the 3rd grade, I assert I would not have been prepared to enter the university system and earn a master's degree had high expectations not been expected of me. In conclusion, Sapan Shivan, 2003, notes, inclusion is not just about disability. It is essentially about social justice. Through inclusion as a model of social justice, we build a world that is fit for everyone.
My name is Lorena Cunha, and I've taught in elementary schools for 29 years. What would it be like to have special needs students in a general education class? If there's an equity-minded leader in your school, you would see evidence of an institutional culture of care with the inclusion of special needs students in a general education classroom. According to Dr. Robert Cooper, one principal approach of leadership is to be committed to building an institutional culture of care in the organization. The inclusion of special needs students in a general education class adds diversity and creates a positive peer culture of care. Their inclusion creates a climate where all members in the classroom community feel seen, heard, respected, and valued. These practices, as Khalifa Tal described, would engage in a culturally responsive and inclusive school environment that respects all individuals. I've had the privilege of experiencing the inclusion of special needs students in my classroom. Students learn from each other and they build nurturing relationships. I noticed a reduced sense of anxiety by special needs children because they felt a sense of community as they created new friendships and meaningful relationships. Inclusion, give it a try.
Hello everyone, my name is Michael Grimble, Athletic Director and PE teacher at Inglewood High School. Today I would like to talk to you briefly about my culture of care within my PE classroom. I do deal with a number of students that are special needs. I also deal with students that have IEPs and also work with students with one-on-one workers. The number one objective in my class is success no matter your level. For my students, my culture of care and the measures that I've built this system on is based on students helping students. When you have a culture of care where students are helping each other, they see the value in each other, and kids see their success, no matter what their ability is. This culture within my class is a major asset for me as a teacher. When it comes to physical education, my book work, students help students to be successful. And it also gives students a gauge and a range to see where they can go with no limits. That is my culture of care within my physical education class. Thank you.
I had a hard time hearing someone. Imagine having this obstacle daily during your educational career. All stakeholders should implement the institutional culture of care, which describes the large caring networks and relationships required to build and sustain a strong, healthy school culture that supports the success of all students. Cooper et al. 2022. In addition, the inclusion model for students with a hearing loss can be successful as long as equity is at the core foundation of all stakeholders. Equity. In order to make this equitable for students with a hearing loss, inclusivity needs to be embedded in the school setting so that the student is not at a disadvantage and can be successful in the least restrictive environment. They need to have access to their hearing assistive technology, classroom accommodations, as well as receive any additional support services needed to succeed. For example, the deaf and hard of hearing itinerant myself. Consider these factors for inclusivity. Preferential seating. Seating near the front of the classroom with a better ear facing the teacher, away from background noise, which can be the door, the AC unit, hallways, voices. Hearing assisted technology. Personal amplification or district provided equipment that provides the students with auditory access to the teacher and their peers. This includes a teacher wearing a microphone and having a pass around microphone so that they can hear their peers and engage in whole group or whole class discussions. Resources. Resources in place for them, such as a peer note taker, closed captioning in all media, and an interpreter. Consider these barriers: lack of teacher support and collaboration, classroom acoustics, visual access to communication, lack of resources already discussed, and lack of amplification or hearing assistive technology. In conclusion, schools must create an institutional environment that promotes high expectations for all of their students while also supporting students in a caring manner. Cooper et al. 2022.
Elvis. I am an English language learner. I remember on my first day of kindergarten, my teacher took me aside and asked me to point to dog. I pointed to cat. She made no big deal of this. She just simply said, "It's okay." So began my introduction to the English language. It was teachers like Ms. Watanabe who showed authentic care, held high expectations for me that paved the way for my successful school learning. They also invited my parents into the conversation. Our English language learners are often marginalized and talked about as the others who still need to reclassify, who are still deficient in their language. In her 2020 article, Malbrad Gatto explains how her research in Texas revealed that school leaders play a pivotal role in expanding equity for our historically marginalized groups, such as English learners. We can either hinder or help their path to reclassification. By adopting an asset-based approach and recognizing that our EL learners have linguistic and cultural strengths, social justice leaders can create equity as we distribute resources and services to them. This is why social justice leaders need to have a deep understanding of the law that govern reclassification of our students. We must also have a transformative approach, that is, be willing to work within the spirit of the law. By seeing our EL students as assets, by ensuring that we are being equitable with our resources, and by working towards a common goal with a clear vision, we will get our English language learners to reclassify. It will take time, work, effort, and understanding, but it can be done. Sí, se puede.
What is LGBTQIA, and why should social justice educators and leaders be concerned with the inclusion of sexual and gender identity in schools? 9.5% of youth ages 13 to 17 identify as lesbian, gay, bisexual, trans, queer, intersex, or asexual in the United States. LGBTQ youth experience trauma at higher rates than their straight peers. More than 1 in 3 ages 13 to 24 report high levels of trauma. Threats of and actual acts of violence, mental and physical, are present in almost every space LGBTQIA students find themselves in, including their communities, their schools, and even their homes. The trauma experienced by queer youth has been demonstrated to be exacerbated by the intersections of race and socioeconomics. Queer youth are at risk for mental health issues, drug and alcohol abuse, sexual violence, homelessness, and suicide as a result of societal stigmas, biases, and rejection. They have a 120% higher risk of experiencing some form of homelessness, with up to 40% of the 4.2 million homeless youth identifying as LGBTQIA+. LGBTQ youth are more than 4 times as likely to attempt suicide as their peers. The Trevor Project estimates that more than 1.8 million LGBTQ youth between 13 and 24 have considered suicide each year in the United States, and at least one attempts suicide every 45 seconds. Melanie Willingham Jagger, Executive Director of Glasson, states that their research shows that LGBTQ youth face hostile school climates where they're denied access to supportive educators and inclusive curriculum, are more likely to skip school because they feel unsafe, will have lower GPAs in academic achievement, and report less of a sense of belonging in schools. LGBTQIA youth deserve a safe space to grow and learn, shaped by educators as their allies and advocates who acknowledge their identities and celebrate their diversity and humanity. This cannot be the task of individual educators, but must be part of an institutional culture of care that is trauma-informed. Together, we can save lives and improve outcomes.
Through these types of caring spaces that aim to cultivate love and affirming students' humanity within educational systems, educators can work towards equity and help students begin to heal from the institutional violence they face in schooling.